That makes.
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, we probably can speak to that a little bit because just before President Trump did his state visit to China, we received the Chinese trade ambassador to the UK at Camelot Castle. And we had a conversation about the visit and how it might go and what might work.
Mm.
And it was very productive. And then after the visit, we received a wonderful invitation to the Chinese embassy in London, and we had an extraordinary dinner there with the trade ambassador and his wife. And we had time over dinner to really get a feeling as to what the objectives and intentions truly are of China. And the impression that we came away with was that Xi Jinping is definitely a peacemaker, and he is somebody that wants to see Russia get on well. In fact, we discussed the idea of holding a meeting of the three heads of state. Actually, we discussed the idea of holding it at the birthplace of King Arthur at Camelot at the Round Table, which would be interesting. But, you know, there are other great locations where that could occur too. But the whole
No,
idea.
I rather like it, and it would be even more fun if you invited the supreme leader of Iran and a major Latin American leader. But let me come to a point about the Chinese. Uh, First, because under Obama and Bush and Clinton, we spent so much money on endless wars and overseas military engagements and so forth. The Chinese took a more asymmetric approach. They spent money on trade and infrastructure,
Exactly.
and they created the One Belt, One Road initiative.
Mm.
Strategically, the Chinese have beat the Americans in relation to the global picture. Now, what President Trump has done, aided in part by this COVID-19 thing that has shown how fragile all of the global just-in-time links are, is he's made it more important now to understand that we need to be self-sufficient at home. We need to bring manufacturing back. We need to make made in America an absolute foundation plank for the
Yep.
future. Having said that, what's that?
I said, especially for key industries, strategic industries such as, your pharmaceutical product,
Mm.
such as, essential, your computer product, key.
Absolutely. Now let me make a couple of points there. Number one, let's take food. To be self-sufficient in food, you need to be self-sufficient in localized, healthy food. And we haven't done that. Now, I'm about to interview a man who's come up with a brilliant concept for turning all shopping malls that are out of business, turning all those shopping malls into agricultural paradises with aeroponics, tall towers, and aquaponics, where you combine fish with plants. And what that would do is picture an inner city, which has no farmland around it, but it has a shopping mall that's empty.
Mm-hmm.
You turn that shopping mall into an agricultural park where everybody in that inner city can go to be exposed to the clean air from trees, to be in touch with nature inside of the shopping mall, to buy tomatoes on the vine, or tomatoes as you guys would say.
Oh, well done.
Uh,
Very good.
what we're talking about here is President Trump has a chance to reinvent America from the bottom up. And the other point that I would make about open source everything engineering is, if you use open source everything engineering, the money that the president has to spend on remaking America will go 5 times further. Because, for example, you can build an open source tractor at 10 to 20% of the cost of a Western tractor. Now, that might make the Western tractor manufacturer unhappy until you point out to them that you can then sell that lower cost tractor to everybody around the world that is using a donkey or an ox or their hands.
Mm.
So open source everything engineering actually becomes an American made export to the rest of the world. Nobody understands that yet.
Well, my late father, would love to hear you saying that, because he was one of the early pioneers of the internet and would talk before anybody understood what the internet was going to do about the idea of open source education. In fact, he wrote to my school, Winchester College, much to the frustration of my housemaster, suggesting that the entire educational syllabus was put online and made available to everybody in Africa. Of course, why not? Why shouldn't you open source engineering? This, I think, this is the untapped potential of the internet. This is the untapped,
response.
and there's
really
a huge
resonates
response
with the viewers.
There's just a little survey I'd like to do with our viewers, and forgive me for those of you. Do we feel on here that the greatest threat to America is China or the deep state? What do you feel is the greatest threat? Because, see, to me, China has its own deep state, and of course, China has its own problems with that. But the country itself, the people of China, the ones I've met are, most of the time very, very pleasant indeed, very nice indeed. So I'd be interested to know, is the real threat to America today the deep state, or is it China? I'd be most interested.
Well,
and in fact, I'm seeing the questions coming through.
The answers.
Basically, everybody's saying deep state.
Deep state, yeah.
I mean, everybody's saying that. And I think, it's very, very important now. And I think this is one of the things that Robert David Steele can speak to, is we've got to start naming the names of the suppressive individuals. Those beings that are actually doing the evil acts and have done the evil acts now need to be named and flushed into view. And it's each of our jobs to educate each other about how suppressive people behave and their patterns. And it is each of our jobs to, help bring justice about. Everybody's saying deep state. Everybody's saying the deep state. So you can see all these comments later.
They're all right. But one of the things I'd like to mention to you is that in my campaign to publicize the crimes of Wall Street, I've had a very, very strong truth and reconciliation aspect to include full presidential pardons for anybody who cooperates with giving the money back. They don't have much choice. We're in a state of war. The president has the War Powers Act. And one of the things we haven't really discussed is my strategy here is, on the one hand, Bill Binney has said that with 10 people in 30 days, he can get every email, every text, every phone call, every game chat of every naked short seller and money launderer on Wall Street. And that includes all of their transactions with all of their offshore accounts where they manipulate stuff.
You sent me that other cartoon, which I'm going to put up on the screen now, which is about the data.
Okay.
I'll just put it on the. Here we go. You see, it says they illegally collect data on all of us. There's your friend Bill Binney. They also collected the dirt on all of them. So this is quite interesting. So that speaks to, I think, just what you're talking about there. There's the cartoon. I'll take it off the screen now.
But I like.
No, let me be quite blunt. Within 30 days, there is nobody on Wall Street, including every single managing partner in Goldman Sachs, who can stand up to a presidential demand. Period.
Wow. So just go into that a little bit, because there's
sure.
Point here we went over that I wanted you to go over, which is sort of Google Gestapo, hashtag Google Gestapo, media censorship, manipulation, and the need for a truth channel, which on our own humble way at Camelot Castle TV, we are attempting and actually having a fair amount of success with. But how about a presidential truth channel?
Yes. Now, let me put to bed the whole NSA thing. NSA has been collecting every electronic bit for the last 15 years. They haven't been processing it. They've actually been storing it. What Binney can do, because that data exists, what Binney can do with 10 people, 30 days, and thin thread, which he invented, he can go in and harvest that data and basically give the president everything. All right? It's beyond controversy. Mm-hmm. The president can also audit the Deposit Clearing and Trust Corporation, Trust and Clearing Corporation. Okay, DTCC. That's now like the foxes in the hen house. That's the DTCC is run by Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch and these other bad actors. Now, moving on to the Truth Channel.
One of our listeners has just put up a post. I will send this to POTUS, just like I sent your info before. He will get it. His sons will get it, and so will his campaign manager will get it. So.
Well, I would like that very much, because unfortunately POTUS is surrounded by people who do not want him to hear new ideas, from what I can see. But I am totally loyal to the president, and I would like him to have these ideas because they'll make him greater. Now, the Truth Channel, one of the problems that I have with people that say, okay, we're going to give the president a Truth Channel, or we're going to give the president a Trump studio, is they're thinking about very narrow casting, one-way communications. So, for example, interview the president 3 times a week. He does a fireside chat. That's it. That's not good enough. What you actually need to do is have every U.S. government official that has anything to say about anything, for example, agriculture or energy or health, all of them are part of this matrix of broadcasts that are going out, and you want to reach 180 million Americans that are eligible voters. Now, you also want a two-way channel. So you want to have a presidential dashboard so that the president can hear from every American on every issue. And basically, and the Federal Reserve actually has this for the economy. It's complex, but it could be done in 30 days. I want the president to be able to see by zip code what people are feeling and seeing on poverty, on infectious disease, on environmental degradation, on race hate crimes, on school education issues, and so forth. And so I want the president to basically get what he's not getting from the intelligence community today, what he's not getting from his cabinet agencies today. I want him to see on one screen how America is feeling about everything. And that's something I know how to do, but it's very hard for your average IT person to commute what's called holistic analytics combined with true cost economics. People don't do that. In the U.S. intelligence community, they don't do that in the IT world. In fact, let me make a point on the IT world. Mary Meeker, who's one of the goddesses of IT, has said the IT world processes 1% of what it has in its database. Okay, we've spent all of our money on collection and storage. We have not spent money on processing, and that's why Bill Binney and I would like to support Mike Flynn in basically empowering the president with almost 100% total knowledge, legal.
Well, somebody says his two-way communication is vital. Two-way communication is vital, and this is something. Now, I do have a question for you here, just before we go on. I don't want to go it by. I do get a lot of questions. Probably it's got something to do with the fact that we flew the Q flag above the battlements on New Year's Day.
Which I'll give you a thumbs up on.
Right. Could you tell our audience what is Q, from your point of view as an ex-intelligence officer, case officer, somebody that has run clandestine ops?
Well, at one point in time, I actually ran all media placements on a particular country for the world as a first-tour case officer. Headquarters got out of my way. My impression is that Q came out of the fevered brain of someone who is highly, highly skilled at intelligence and psychological operations. The only name that comes to mind is Mike Flynn. Of course, I have no direct knowledge. I'm told that Q is actually 5 or 6 different people. What impresses me about Q is if you go back to 2018 and 2017, and you then fast forward to how things are happening like clockwork, the Q proofs cannot be denied. And I think Q was an extraordinarily brilliant way of trying to show people a hope for the future that could ultimately be proven. Now, we still need to see arrests. We still need to see a resurgence of the economy. We've got 40 million unemployed. We've got half the people have not paid their rent in the past month. So we've got some major, major issues coming forward. But on balance, it's almost as if you had to burn the house down in order to rebuild it. And so I stand with Charles Hugh Smith, who wrote a brilliant article on how what has actually happened in the last 60 days is the fraud economy has burned to the ground. And what the president does to build a new economy in the Phoenix Rising is going to be critical. And that's where you're going to need the intersection. I have this trifecta that I'm constantly thinking about: truth, democracy, made in America. You need all three of those in the next 90 days.
Okay, good. So could you talk to us a little bit about, we've been over media censorship and the need for a truth channel. What is this unrig election reform and the 12 different reforms that would open all elections up? Because that was very, very interesting.
Well, I was inspired by the president. He said one day the system is rigged. And I swear by all that's holy, God came down and said, Robert, #unrig. Okay? The president said the system is rigged. My mind exploded. #unrig. So I wrote a volume on how the president could unrig the electoral system. And I got Cynthia McKinney, a congresswoman, a very elegant lady. She served 6 terms in Congress. She has a PhD in leadership. She wants very much to help the president. But she's been unable to connect to the president, despite...
Our viewers who don't know who Cynthia McKinney is, just to clarify this, she is an incredibly well-respected black leader in America. And she is somebody who really knows other black leaders. And so what you're really saying is that Cynthia McKinney would love to bring her diaspora, bring her groups behind the president for the election. And she was a Democrat, wasn't she?
She was a Democrat. She was the Green Party candidate for president. And she is beloved by the Bernie Sanders people who hate Joe Biden. So Cynthia's a 3-4. Black, woman, progressive, and a Trump lover.
So this is manna from heaven.
But she's shut out. I've had this conversation with Roger Stone, and Roger told me that every time the president brings this up or someone mentions her to the president, he said, oh, no, she's a communist. She's a Muslim sympathizer. She's taken money from terrorists in Arabia. These are all lies. I think people are lying to them.
Knowing the president as we do, I don't think that, that could be what you're hearing back from an intermediary. Let's just take a moment to review in simple language why Cynthia coming on board would be helpful for an election win.
Well, it's extremely clear that if the president wants the mother of all landslides, he needs at least 20% of the black vote. Cynthia and I have had this discussion. We've also talked to Herman Cain, or she's talked to Herman Cain, but I'm not sure that the word has gotten through Herman Cain to the president. We believe we can deliver 35 to 40% of the black vote if several things come together. One of them is someone like Cynthia McKinney campaigning full time. Okay. I'm talking about, this is a 60-ish woman of great accomplishment. This is not a 20-something celebrity. Okay. This is a woman of substance. Number 2, we've tried to tell the president multiple times that the last political prisoners in America are the Native American leaders, including Pelletier, and the Black Panthers. If the president were to pardon the Black Panthers, including posthumous pardons, I cannot overstate the impact that the black leaders have told me would be deliverable to the president. Last but not least, people underestimate the degree to which the black community understands President Trump as an America First president. I sat down with Dr. Randy Short in Washington, D.C. He's a tremendous PhD historian. He's the aide-de-camp to the leader of 7,000 black parishes, churches. And he said to me, Robert, Donald Trump made me feel like I was getting America back. All right. There is this deep respect for the president among black people. but they're being treated, I think, with disrespect. I noticed, for example, in Atlanta, there was a so-called Blacks for the President rollout. It was pathetic. It had fewer than 200 people in the biggest black city in the United States of America. It simply wasn't serious. Cynthia McKinney is serious. If the president wants to give Joe Biden hemorrhoids, all he has to do is invite Cynthia in for a meet and greet, no matter what he does after that.
It's very interesting. And then what you're saying is if there were to be posthumous pardons for the Black Panthers that have died, and then release the ones, I mean, they've got to be pretty old now, on the basis of the second chance. I mean, I have had, as I think I've mentioned to you, had a lot of admiration for the way in which actually Kim Kardashian and Jared and Ivanka really embrace this idea of a second chance. And possibly they would be the people to really embrace this, because I think, the family really, really understands. One of the things that I feel the family understands is that the day after the election, if you didn't win, you lost. And, the day of the election is when people vote, you see. Election, the day after, once you've lost that election, you've lost 4 potential years of doing good, you see. So I think we've got to put everything on the table. I think we have to look at ideas that perhaps are not obvious ideas. And that's why I think your idea, we talked about this the other night.
Let me say these ideas are not mine. These ideas are from the black leaders themselves. They can't reach the president.
That's very interesting.
That's amazing.
Let me tell you why that's interesting. It's because the people the president is listening to are not representing the black leaders of America.
Well, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to take this little segment and we're going to lift this segment. We're going to put it out on Twitter. And I'm going to ask every single person on here to retweet it with the hashtag that we're going to create. And let's just get this idea. Here's the truth. The president may not like the idea. But I think it deserves, from what I'm hearing, it deserves a shot. It deserves a shot.
Oh, absolutely. And, one of the things, I react badly to the concept of second chance because we actually owe the black people of America an apology.
No. I'm not saying that the Black Panthers deserve a second chance. I don't really understand that issue. What I'm saying is there is a precedent with pardoning people that is.
There is, and let me also say, with enormous respect to everyone that works for the president, command is something you can't delegate. Outreach to the black community has to be very personal, and it has to be done by the president himself.
Well, I'm sure. There's somebody's just said here, Questus says here, I'm black and support Trump. I have done a total U-turn on Trump. We are hearing this more and more. I think probably maybe 10%, maybe 30% of the black community realizes and understands that Trump is the better deal for them and the better deal for America, and they're very loyal to America. I think there is, in some ways, and of course I only lived in America for 6 years, but what I have felt about the black community is in some way they are even more deeply patriotic in some cases than, for instance, people in California or people that you find in New York.
They are. And let me make the point that I've driven an RV with Cynthia McKinney across this country for 3,000 miles, and you have not lived until you've been in an RV with Cynthia McKinney. She got the Queen Bee suite, and the staffer and I got the 2 bunk beds. But we had chances to talk. And one of the things we've talked about, I did an interview with Judy Mikovits, who said that the CDC and the National Institute of Health have been trying to kill blacks for the last 100 years. Okay? They actually have vaccines and strategies for reducing the black population. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what Dr. Mikovits said. All right? Now, here's what Cynthia McKinney said to me, and I'm a deplorable, okay? I'm a white deplorable. She said, Robert, one day she said, Robert, all this bad stuff that's happening to you white people, they did it to us first. All right. And I love that meme of the president where he says, they're not after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way. I buy into that 100%. The president is standing up for all Americans. Now let's segue from black to green and libertarian and independence. You know, you've asked me, what is this hashtag unrig thing? I don't know if you can show the political landscape graphic that I sent you, but the bottom.
I don't think I. Okay.
I'll speak to it. The Democrats control 17% of the votes, although now the Bernie people are so angry at being screwed over a second time. I mean, Joe Biden is a senile senator from Wall Street. Okay, let me say that again. Joe Biden is the senile senator from Wall Street. Okay, he's done more. He's done as much as Christopher Dodd and Blumenthal from Connecticut to legalize crime by Wall Street. President needs a tough on crime card, and I'm trying to give him one. Now, hashtag unrig is about opening Congress to everybody, because Congress today is a two-party tyranny. I have a graphic I paid for which has this vulture on Congress, and it's got two wings, one blue wing, one red wing, and the caption is one bird, two wings, same crap. There is no difference between the Republican rhinos and the Democratic pedos and transgenders and all this other stuff. What we need to do is fill Congress in 2022 with libertarians, Greens, hashtag walkaways from the Democratic Party, Tea Party people who are still angry that did you know that the Republican Party is blocking Trumpers from becoming precinct captains? The official policy of the Republican Party, run by a Romney relative, is to not allow pro-Trump enthusiasts to fill any of the 50% of the seats that are vacant. And Dan Schultz, who's a lawyer, has documented this across this country. Trump is being undermined by his own party at the precinct level. So my bottom line is, if you want to get the 70% of the people that are disenfranchised by the two parties to give him the mother of all landslides, it's a straightforward deal. You pass the Election Reform Act of 2020, and that guarantees 200 seats to people who are neither Republican nor Democratic in 2022. And that then, combined with the election reform things, which eliminates corporate money and so forth, that then leads to evidence-based policymaking in Congress, which is something I know about. You make decisions based on evidence, not, as the president has said, on pay to play, who paid for the outcome.
That's incredible.
Very interesting. Now, there is something that I would like you to get into, because we've talked about the deep state and the level of corruption, and at the main body of that windmill cartoon, which I will put up on the screen again.
While you're doing that, I want you to know I have this on my desk.
Oh, well done, well done, well done. Now, the main body of that windmill that you're tilting at there talks about Satanism and pedophilia. You know, whenever I talk about this on the show, I actually get quite angry, because we get a lot of questions later to say, well, is that really real? You know,
people refuse to believe it.
They refuse to believe it. Now, we met through Sasha Stone. Sasha Stone, by the way, has just been deplatformed off of YouTube, and basically is very, very serious. And also the International Justice Tribunal has also been deplatformed, and all of those hearings that you participated in, Robert, have been basically taken down. Now, one of the main targets of the International Justice Tribunal has been to expose what is really going on with the child trafficking. Could you explain what is the relationship, here's my question, between the child trafficking, adrenochrome manufacture, and how this is used to blackmail and to control, Wall Street and also politics?
And judges. Let me start by giving the president very high marks. He did 2 executive orders, one in December 2017, one in January 2020, that are hugely significant on human trafficking. Human trafficking, and particularly child trafficking, underlies every other great crime in this country. Children are now more valuable than drugs for criminal transactions. As best I can tell, toward 8 million children a year are being abducted.
How many?
And every 8 million. Toward 8 million children a year. In the United States, it's 800,000 to 1 million.
Wow.
All right. This is very serious stuff. And part of the problem is that wars create refugees. And if you look at Hillary Clinton, for example, the Haitian disaster, her friends were in there scooping up children.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Say that.
This is a matter of record.
Yeah.
Now, let me go back to the whole thing of child sacrifice, adrenochrome, and so forth. I didn't believe it myself, but Pizzagate woke me up. Is it Pizzagate or Comet Pizza?
Okay.
All of that. That woke me up, and I started looking into it, and I connected with an author, a West Point graduate. That's our Sandhurst, I guess. A West Point graduate, Joaquim Hagopian. And with my encouragement, he has written a book to which I wrote the foreword called, and this is free online. Everything I do is free online because my whole point is to try and raise public awareness and so forth.
Your website, robertsteele.com.
No, robertdavidsteele.com.
robertdavidsteele.com. Somebody will put it in the links. Mark, if you could put it in the links. It's our technical division.
Right.
Basically, and they can read about this. This is not something that is a secret to them. If they want to go on to, they can do their research on your website.
Please
I gotta give Amazon high credit because they haven't censored these books or these chapters. They're also free online. I mean, people who know tinyurl.com just go to Pedo Empire.
Okay.
That's the short URL. But under my encouragement, Joaquin has produced 34 chapters so far, with additional chapters to come. And each chapter documents pedophilia going back into time. This is not new. I mean, the Aztecs and the Mayans were sacrificing children and drinking their blood and so forth. And drinking a child's blood without torturing the child is a known anti-aging device. Peter Thiel is on record in the newspaper saying he gets a transfusion of child's blood every day. All right. Now, the question is, what about torturing children? So we have pedophilia, which is child sex abuse. Then we have torturing children to create adrenochrome. And the easiest way I've found to explain this to people is to think about how the Chinese torture dogs. They basically boil dogs alive. And the reason they do that is because it changes the flavor of the meat. And what it's doing is it's pumping adrenaline from the tortured dog into the blood. And that's what's changing the flavor. Okay? Now, I have never participated in a satanic ritual abuse act. I've never talked to anyone who has been present at a satanic ritual abuse act. But Joaquim Hagopian has documented hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of links of people who have testified about all of this stuff, which includes things like forcing fetuses to be delivered and eaten on site as part of the ritual. Now, let me stop there and just say that Sidney Powell, I'm a huge fan of Sidney Powell, Mike Flynn's lawyer. I like to say that the only difference between Sidney Powell as a pit bull is that one wears pearls. Okay? She is a monster. And I would like to see her be a Supreme Court justice because there's no one else in America that is standing up to crooked judges and crooked prosecutors. And by the way, crooked judges are running children into pedophilia by taking them away from their parents, and they're running the elderly to their graves in order to strip them of their estate. And the way this works is the elder person is drugged up, then the sheriff takes them away, then the estate is sold, and the judge, the prosecutor, the sheriff, and the doctor all split the proceeds. Okay? Sidney Powell gave a speech recently at a university in which he talked about what was known to have been on the Weiner laptop. which had all of the Hillary Clinton and Huma Abed stuff.
Mm.
And what she said was that what the New York police saw on that laptop caused them to vomit. I cannot overstate.
That's a New York police officer.
Yes,
but
multiple officers.
Right,
Actually, I love the New York police.
Let's just say that again. That's a New York police officer who's seen a few things over the life of being a New York police officer. That's not a cozy job. That's not like a...
What I'm trying to say here is two things. The first is, before the FBI under Obama came in to confiscate the laptop and try to protect Clinton, the New York Police Department copied it. And the second thing I'm going to say is I'm quite confident the President of the United States of America knows all of this in detail.
Wow.
Well, this is fantastic. Now, listen, please, everybody listening here, share this now. I'd be very surprised if YouTube allows this to remain up for longer than 24 hours. Okay?
Well, the good news is BitChute will copy it in the first 15 minutes.
Good.
That's good. But
So
is there any hope in that situation? Is there a progress being made?
Yes, the short answer is yes. I have no direct knowledge. There's lots of rumors about how the president has been clearing tunnels. There are tunnels under New York. Lexington and Concord is actually not a reference to the battle. It's a reference to an intersection in New York where there are tunnels, and it's called Wonderland. There are underground. If you remember Jeffrey Epstein's island,
Yeah.
he had a complex of underground tunnels in that island, which his estate just spent, I think he's still alive, but his estate just spent $20 million filling in those tunnels to basically put the forensic evidence out of reach. I don't know directly, but I believe the President of the United States is a very, very smart man. I believe that he is going to reveal all of this to the public, but first he's got to get America back on track morally and economically.
Well, I hope so.
I hope so.
I live in hope that this is true.
very, very pleased to see that. I was very, very pleased to see that the churches were reopened in America by the president. I think it was yesterday, wasn't it?
The governors have given it up. Now, I am very upset by how many people have accepted lies with the help of YouTube and Facebook and others. I was one of the first to say this is a minor flu, this is a fake pandemic,
You were.
and the masks don't work. And the president, God bless him, has talked about this hydrochlorine or whatever, which the French doctor proved 90 days ago. 100% success rate. Renault, I think his name is. Okay, so the president has very subtly let the American people know that we cannot trust the FDA, we cannot trust the CDC, we cannot trust the FCC. The U.S. government is essentially, the president is in charge of an enemy camp. And I have to say, I'm very upset that the president did not have the benefit of the 4,000 people waiting to replace all of the Obama people. We were very slow to replace the Obama holdovers, too many of whom remain, particularly in the intelligence community. Nothing would please me more than to have Mike Flynn replace Gina Haspel, have the DNI, the new DNI, wind his job down by cutting all the agencies, and at the same time, purge the intelligence community. We have too many people at the top of every single secret agency who are traitors, plain and simple.
100%. 100%.
And UK people, we have quite a few UK people. They just wanted to have your take on Boris Johnson. Is there anything you can say in the or not? But there's just so many people have asked.
I'm conflicted on Boris Johnson. I think everybody has two sides to them. I don't know enough to say. One of the things that has caused me real trouble is that all European countries appear to be led by people that in some way, shape, or form are owned by the deep state.
That's...
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think the deep state is very... Could you just... Because, you know...
Forgive me, stop for 1 second. I want to talk about the special relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States of America.